Okay, we're getting live now. I mean, we're getting live.
We're going live. I'm so tech averse. This is so fun and easy. It's
What's techaverse mean?
like I think there are too many apps and too many different ways of doing the same thing, and your messages live in so many different places. It's hard to stay on top of it. So I'm averse to, like, turned off by technology, and I'm reworking that with experiences like this. I'm like, oh, we're having tea and hanging out. And
Come across to me as really tech savvy, like all your Instagram stuff, like you got all the stories. I'm like, how did you do that? Like, do that on Instagram? Like I just see you as really like knowing what you're doing.
I mean, there's the millennial thing, like we like grew up with it, but also I see what resonates with how other people share their soulful stuff and entrepreneurship, and how they like what I feel attracted to. And I'm like, oh, that feels authentic. It feels good to be, yeah, putting it all together. It's evolving.
All right, so we're live now, and I just want to say hello, everybody. If anyone's watching, I appreciate you coming here to the channel, Sara and Matisse Constellation. And this channel is dedicated to constellation work, whether it's family constellation, business, tabletop, horse constellation, which is what we are going to talk about today. There was a part one we did 2 weeks ago, and we didn't get into the meat and potatoes of the work. So that's why I invited you back so that we can really talk about the work and like what it looks like, how it affects people, and how the horses respond, uh, all that kind of stuff, which you might be interested in. I hope so. Anyway, and you're interested in it, and if you think other people are interested in it, please share. That would be great, and please subscribe and like and all that good stuff. It really helps get the information out because ultimately I feel like this is a very positive thing. I'm going to say thing, what we're doing as far as it supporting horses that ordinarily would have gone to slaughter, like basically the horses that aren't rideable or have some kind of injury going on or whatever, and ended up in a situation where they were going to go to slaughter ultimately. And believe it or not, horses get sold for meat for human consumption. And obviously not in America, but in other countries where they do eat horse meat. And I don't have a judgment on that. I just prefer that the horses don't have to go through that kind of traumatic ordeal, because when they do get slaughtered, they get transported out of the United States in unregulated ways, which is absolutely horrendous for them. And so, if you're a horse owner and you're thinking about like just kind of getting another horse and getting rid of your horse, like don't like don't do that. They end up it's hell for horses, really. And maybe come up with another way, or Anyway, I can go on and on about that, but ultimately, this work supports these kinds of horses. They actually they're incredible as well, and so that's what we're going to talk about. And I'm going to leave my website in the description, and I'm also going to leave Matisse's website in the description, and how you can get a hold of her, how you can get a hold of me if you want to find out more. So that all being said, I want to introduce Matisse Williams, and just do you want to say something about yourself just to get it going, Matisse?
Yeah, I have had the pleasure of learning from, working with Sara over the last 5 years. And that is when I began both my path as a horse owner and as a constellation facilitator, and been evolving the work, and ever since. So kind of, actually, I think tomorrow is 5 years since I called you to begin.
All
And you
right.
began. Yeah.
Very
So happy
good.
birthday to the horses and me.
Us.
Us. Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I'm really proud of you in that you did learn the work and you fully immersed yourself in it and you created your life so that you can support what you're doing in the sense of, like you got your herd together, you found the best location for your horses, and that meant moving across country from East Coast to West Coast. And that was a huge ordeal. I know that, and you have 5 horses, and now it's about a year, isn't it, since you've been in Ojai?
Yeah.
Yeah. So a year now, and now you're actually up and running. Your business is running. It's really great. I'm really proud of you, and I'm honored to have been your teacher. And I'm so happy that you're here today, so we can
Thank
talk
you.
about it. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm so glad too, because the work really can be confusing if you try to understand it with the mind and try to describe it. Sometimes people are like, "Do you do astrology for horses?" and yet there are people that feel a deep connection to it, both to healing in a model that is systemic and embodied, and to just being around the horses and their presence and that kind of magnetic feeling to their medicine and their majesty. So I'm glad we can riff on it and provide some examples too, because I think the examples really help to illustrate what kind of transformation can happen and what it looks like, because sometimes people are a little nervous or afraid of what will come up or how it will come up and how it all goes down.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And I just want to say that whoever we mention, we're not going to mention names, and we have the people's consent to talk about their sessions.
Yeah.
And yeah, we're just very cautious about privacy and things like that. So, but ultimately, it's kind of about what it kind of looks like and how the horses react and all that good stuff. So, do you want to kick off with some good example of what a horse
Oh
constellation
man.
is?
Yeah. It's always, I laugh because I think I answer this question differently every single time. And it's all true. Um, yeah, and I think at its simplest, the horse constellations it's a hybrid modality where you combine the world of healing with horses and then the world of constellations. And it's so natural to do that. I'm so glad you figured that out, because now I and many others get to kind of propagate that around the world now, which is so cool. Do you want me to give an example or talk more about
Yeah,
like
yeah,
what
whatever you
a
want to say. But I just want to say, like, I didn't invent horse constellations. Like,
right?
I put it together. Like, no one, I didn't model off anyone else, but I learned family constellation. I had horses already. I was doing therapeutic work with them already, and a peer of mine, actually Hazel, she suggested, why don't you use the horses and do constellations with them? And I was like,
Yeah.
well, I don't know how that would be. She said, let's try it out.
Mhm.
And it was incredible. And then from that point on, I continued. And that was in 2008. But there are other people that do it. I know I have people that do horse constellations. They contact me,
Yeah.
a woman in South America, there's a woman in Africa, South Africa. And yeah, because I was in that book, the Nature's
Hmm.
Constellation Francesca put together. I was featured in it. There were 15 people who do kind of nature constellations. And I think that gave me a kind of, stamp in a way of like, oh, she's a horse constellation person. But I just want to say, I didn't invent it. I mean,
Hmm.
anyway, okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So the constellations are so different. No two are alike. And part of the joy of doing the work is realizing they can meet anybody where they are in their process, and that it's really humbling to see just how much variety there is in the human experience and in the path of working with the human heart. The constellations that I've worked with are usually intrapersonal, like parts work, parts of someone's self. So examples of that would be like the first one I had with you, where we constellated my goal, my fear, and my power. I actually, and this is a fun one I like to refer to, because sometimes people are like, transgenerational trauma. Uh-oh, I'm not ready to go there. And I'm like, well, it's a choose your own adventure based on what somebody brings to the sharing, to the opening. That dictates where we're going to begin. And I did one recently with someone's head, heart, and hoo-ha. And she was trying to make a decision.
What's a hoo-ha?
her lady bits.
Oh, okay.
She started sharing, like, my head is telling me this, my heart is telling me this. I'm confused. It's like, great, let's constellate these three parts of you so that they can interact with each other, and we can get to this harmonic of truth, or see who needs some acknowledgement, some healing. So they can be really contained within a person. I think we've done them too with like past, present, future, moving kind of in the sense of time. And constellations also can be a form of soul retrieval, where you're working with little you from a certain event or experience. Then there's the family constellations and systemic ones that are interpersonal, which can range also through time. Like sometimes many generations are brought in, sometimes it's just parents and child. And then there's also what I would call transpersonal or spiritual dimension to the constellations that comes in, that are really creative and about people's gifts and offerings and creations. But the ones that really like touch my heart the deepest, and that I think where I go, okay, this is really why this work exists, is when people have separation or excommunication from their family. And after the constellation happens, like people will mysteriously kind of start reaching out or reconnecting. And it feels like this family trees that has like broken limbs, or part of it isn't getting water, starts to get really healthy as this love begins to flow. And then also adopted people, that's been a really incredible way to serve this medicine, is like people that don't know their family of origin, or that know very few facts about their family of origin, and then reconnecting to that, the river of life that moves through the generations.
What about the person?
What about it? Well, okay, I'm laughing because it's set up in a funny way. Where the constellation went, it started with a lot of confusion and these conflicting voices. So by creating representatives for each of the parts, it allowed the participant to see it on the outside, to listen, to watch the energy signatures of these three parts. She was really driven to make a decision, and felt that there was some kind of perfect right decision, that choice that lived outside of her. So the very nature of how we began was disempowering. It was like, the constellation will tell me everything. There's an answer I'm not seeing. I don't know. Some benevolent parent-like force of the universe knows and is going to tell me what to do so that I can be a good girl and make the right choice. So we ended up going deep into the heart, because the heart had some, what I would call archetypal damsel or wounded maiden. And the constellation ended up being about claiming the power of her voice, and really enjoying the gift of life, like giving herself permission to say, look, there is no objectively right choice here. What is your heart's desire? What does your heart want to say? What does it look like after we kind of acknowledge and bring the voice of the heart, which was a little her, home and into the mix? And then what does it feel like the choice goes from being a burden, from being confusing, from being tangled up, into a really powerful stance of like, oh, I can't make a wrong choice in the scenario that she had brought forth. It was like, I am empowered to choose. So it really would ultimately say it was about an empowerment shift, and just how she chooses to engage with herself in the moment. And that she was kind of giving the power away, even through humor. It was sort of an avoidant tactic to stay away from the hurt. But in creating this therapeutic alliance and starting with what was true, she was like, head hard hoo-ha. Okay, here we go. So we started there. And as the nature of the constellation kind of deepens and softens and opens, you're like, okay, here's the part that's actually coming forth to get integrated. And then what does that moment look like where truth starts to resonate and authenticity? And then, of course, that's when the horses are like, get me some of that. I love that energy. And then come over. And one of the horses really came in as a strong masculine figure, which also kind of indicated this sort of mature feminine process. And then having this, the elder horse of my geldings came and just sort of like said, what's up? Okay, there's balance, there's union, and help create closure around that one. It was actually Obi, the Arabian pony. Yeah. I thought he was 12 when I got him, and he must have already been in his 20s. So he's like,
so how did the person walk away from that? Like, did you follow up? Did you find out how?
Actually, I saw her about a year later, and she said, I met the guy. And I was like, what guy? I don't know what you're talking about. She said, I met the horse. That was the horse holding the place of my future partner. And she was like, she actually told him when she met him, like, you're the horse. And he had no idea what she was talking about. So I say that too, because I'm glad you asked. The constellations take time to assimilate. So there's that initial first few days, first week, first month, where that whole energy of like feeling like wanting to take this kind of new vehicle for a spin of like, wow, what does it feel like to move through this space of my life with like, I can't make the wrong choice. I trust myself. I'm stoked on being me, like that initial. And then in the slow burn in the background was like, oh, this wholeness of her feminine being like magnetizing a partner who was the right and perfect equal for her. It took a year, but that's how these things work, which is part of the reason I think there's such a powerful practice.
Yeah. And it's interesting when you were talking about this element of deferral, like wanting, the constellation to come up with all the answers or figure it all out,
Yeah.
As far as not being sort of involved or accountable, right?
Right.
And that sort of leads me to something I did want to touch on, which is sort of the difference with this work than going to see a psychic reader, with animal communicator or a past life regressionist, whatever, or some person who is basically going to tell you why you're messed up, or like, and a medical intuitive even, where and I'm not saying they can't see what's going on with you and that, but there's something really different about coming to it on your own, either by watching the constellation unfold or being in the constellation as it unfolds. It really lands in a way that is very different than someone telling you, for these reasons. And also so in that exchange of bringing in someone else, to tell you what's going on, you're giving your power over, like you just gave your power up, and then it's kind of like a fulfilling prophecy in the sense of, now I'm gonna, oh, that's how life is gonna be, what the psychic said, and I get that all the time. I get
Yeah.
psychic told me this, da 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 da, or past life questioners told me that my last girlfriend murdered me, so I'm not gonna have a girlfriend this time around. Like I'm like, okay, done deal. Like
Yeah.
this sort of, why even try? I was told it didn't go well the last time. I mean, I don't know, don't get me started. But
Yeah.
in this work, it's like we're not telling anyone anything. It's like the information is coming through. It's in the field. It's showing up in the horses, in the people who are repping,
Yeah.
in the wild animals, the birds, the sounds, the elements, all that kind of stuff is showing up. And it really is, I do feel it's up to, like, the person that you just mentioned. She had her version of that constellation, and it sounded like that you didn't even get that she thought the horse was going to be a partner or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but like that's hers to take whatever she wants from it, without us really saying, like, no, it's like this and this,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Absolutely.
that's why I feel like it's different than kind of psychic work and stuff. And again, I don't want to rag on psychics, but I do tell my students, like, stop seeing psychics.
Mm-hmm.
Because you are, like, we are all psychics. We are,
Right.
and
Yeah.
I used to see psychics a lot, and I used to call animal communicators a lot. And I think that last, like, I don't know, 10 years or something, I haven't,
Yeah.
because I would rather work it out in a constellation. I
Mm-hmm.
would rather do a blind constellation where nobody knows who they are, what's going on, and then you see how they act or behave. You see how
Yeah.
the horses act and behave, and then the story kind of unfolds out of that, without any
Yeah.
bias, any assumptions, and
Yeah. It's like there's a stopgap on the ego because there isn't, it's a very feminine model. It's an earth-based model. Origins are indigenous practice. These are like holistic, life-giving, regenerative systems of healing that are connected to the greater ecosystem and the cycles and rhythms of nature. It's like the village, it's the forest, it's not a hierarchy in the same way where the kind of patriarchalized systems are. And we all have this imbalanced patriarchalized template and colonial mindset, kind of like, especially in the world of therapy. It's a very white Eurocentric way of healing. And it's like people are broken and need to be fixed, or there's the model is sick, well, and then there's the person who is in charge of making someone who's sick well. It's really isolating. It takes the power out of the patient for being their own healer or for healing within the context of a broader system. In religion, that, like, some of the major religions of the world, it's like sin and goodness, like right and wrong. And then, like, in this model, and like someone's going to help you fix yourself if you're in the bad, becoming good. It's so dualistic and polarizing. And the constellations are like more about closed and open, and they're more about unexpressed and expressed, or like the unseen and seen. It's like this system of opening. It feels like the way that the natural world opens and cycles and feels. And because the energy is being interpreted by multiple beings, animal, like human, the weather, the sun, like the way the sun moves and casts shadows, or the weather and like the wind, or um even like cars out in the distance, or coyotes, like all of those pieces, or I think you say like they're singing the symphony of the present moment. There's all these voices. It takes the power stance of the hierarchy, like so that's not consolidated into like one expert, which that has its proper place. In this model, it's like everyone is capable of and is gifted in interpreting and recognizing energy and charge. And a lot of people don't even know how they naturally already are doing it. So in some way, it's a practice space for really refining the senses and the ways we translate energy in the invisible world. And like anybody that's capable of having feelings and is capable of participating in someone else's constellation. So a lot of the time I get people that are afraid. They're like, what if I don't get any information? What if I can't do it? What if I do it wrong? So there's a lot of empowerment comes from feeling that and then trying anyway and trusting, and then like realizing, wow, I just was in service to somebody else's healing by responding and being present and listening. And that's another beautiful effect beyond just the person who's having the constellation is participating in someone else's. It's so humbling and honoring.
Yeah, well said. Well said. I also see it as sort of an improv, sort
Mm-hmm.
of theatrical sometimes. And recently, I did one, and there was three people, and two of them were from a specific race, and the other one was white. And the white person, I hate saying white people. I mean, I don't like to differentiate people like that. But anyway, this person had the medicine for the person that was getting it, having the constellation. And nobody knew each other. It was so random how everybody came together. And I always trust that. Like I trust that the people who aren't supposed to come are not going to get here. The ancestors are going to make sure of that. And the ones who
Mm-hmm.
are supposed to be here are going to come. So I get really relaxed around that. And so this person had the medicine, and it was a song. It was a sacred song that this person had learned, and it was complicated. It wasn't like a song I would ever remember. It was in their language, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was blown away, like,
Mm-hmm.
and the way that this person delivered it said, "Well, I do have a blessing for you because they
Mm-hmm.
are. Can you bless us?
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's what you ask the ancestors to do. Can you bless us? Sometimes that happens, right?" And she said, "Yeah, I have a blessing," and she sang this song, and their
Wow.
faces, I've never seen it. They could not believe it. They could not believe it, and it broke some ice. It
Yeah.
really kind of got in a way that I don't know how else we could have got in like that. It was incredible, and I feel like people come with medicine, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what we're doing. We're
Yeah.
here healing work, and everybody, it's a collaboration. Everybody has something,
Yeah.
and it's I always say, like, it's such a incredible service to rep for someone. It's
Mm-hmm.
deep service, and to you know to have reverence for the reps, um, who helping heal your ancestors and your descendants, and selflessly,
Yeah.
and it's intense, and there's times where it's very difficult for some people if it's a very dark subject matter, murder or something like that. Like, who wants to represent a
Mm-hmm.
murderer, sorry, or the one who got murdered, you know? But you'd be surprised. People come in and they do it, and it's so selfless and incredible, and it forms these bonds with people. And I
Yeah.
always feel like when I was doing a lot of rapping and I was in a lot of constellation circles. I felt, I don't know, it really gave me a sense of humility, and like that people are innately good, like
Mhm.
they, they do this for you, and it forms these bonds, that kind of like you never forget them. Like you'll
Yeah,
never forget the person who repped you in that constellation, or that horse that came in at
yeah,
that moment
yeah,
and stood next to you for like
yeah,
50 minutes. You'll never forget that horse,
yeah.
right?
So true. It's such a potent touchstone of a breakthrough because it's your whole body with all these, it's like this snapshot you give of like, okay, when that horse came over at the end, or when these two pieces or people reconciled, um it's so moving, and it is like theater or a dream. It is like ritual theater in that sense of like there's a scene that you're in and a part of and witnessing. You get to have this living snapshot of your inner world, and it's always like usually each group there's one person that's concerned about like giving their negative energy away to somebody else. Or the one of the groups I had recently, we started with a really tiny little fragment. Like we didn't have this big grand constellation to begin with all these people. We started with this feeling of like, I am carrying a darkness that I don't understand, and I know it's limiting me from being fully alive and being fully available in my emotional relationships. So she chose someone to represent the darkness and was really reserved about doing that. And there was someone in the group who's like, I know it's meant to be me. I feel that I with honor and gratitude, like I will go rep this. Um, and so there's a lot of surprise and the permission that people give themselves, to like be with what is without judgment.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
and that's also where the horses come in a big way. It's like they love authenticity and truth because it's not sketchy like a predator. Predators hide information, they creep around. When someone's authentic and in their truth, it's like, I am out, here's who I am, and they're like, okay, that's safe for me. And one of the things I learned just by practicing and watching and experiencing so many of these is that they don't have judgment around the emotions like we do. So people who are feeling angry but putting on a smile, that's inauthentic, that's incongruent, and they don't like the energy signature of incongruence. But if someone is angry and they're being angry and they're actually feeling what is true for them, they're not like, oh, that's an angry person, we don't like anger. They're like, okay, this is what is true. Or sadness, or some of these ones that we go so hard to avoid feeling. Um,
Yeah, I see that a lot with shame, shame around like our
mhm.
rules, our culture,
Yeah,
or religious rules and things like that. And like the horses don't understand that. Like
right.
they don't run it, they don't live in that world.
Yeah,
And so they can come in and break through all of that and get right to the point, which is connection, to your baby,
mhm.
connection to someone who you felt you wronged in some way or whatever, even if that
Yeah,
person's dead, right?
yeah.
And they'll come in and they'll literally bump you, push you to that
Mhm.
person. Right? And then
Yeah,
in that action is a sort of like shock, because
yeah,
and you see the way someone reacts when the horse deliberately and definitively
yeah,
pushes them in the direction of where they're kind of resisting a little, and
yeah,
it's and they're like, and then they
yeah.
kind of fall back, and the horse does it again, you know.
Mhm.
And I said,
Yeah,
I think they're really telling you something right now.
for sure.
Why don't you check it out? But that happens all the time. Does that happen with your guys?
Yeah, totally. And each of the horses kind of has their different flavor of that. My little pony Nugget will just stand right next to people and just kind of side, like in their side, and start to nudge them. And they'll say, I feel like he wants me to go over there. I'm like, so go over there with him. And he'll walk people next to another person or to a tree or to the edge of the arena. And then he'll just walk away. Like, okay, good. Now you got the memo. Like, so he'll do that way. My mare Gigi will kind of come from behind and just sort of go like, come on, go over there that way. And then Oakley Sensei will draw lines in the dirt. Like he'll walk between different people or objects. And then so I'll take a stick and draw what he just drew. And I'm like, okay, he just either like broke through the energy that was stuck, or he mapped A to B and created a line of momentum, like a vector moving that way. So he's kind of like looking at these blueprints of the shape and the architecture of the pieces in the constellation.
I was going to say that he's like, right?
Yeah, it's like he's like big picture, and he's very tall. So I'm like, maybe he's seeing invisible energy in a different way. And then Goliath, we mentioned this a little bit last time. He's a energy worker. So he'll actually work on people with his breath or with his gaze. So he's kind of like off to the side until there's some space. So that it does vary from that, but that's kind of what I see now that they're really, they've been in this job with me for 5 years. So they have their flow with each other too.
Yeah. That's great. I just want to say something about Silver, because Silver was the horse. Awesome. The one who really brought me to this work and to this place and what I'm doing now. And he did pass in 2019 around this time. But he was incredible. He twice, I saw him do this like 3 times actually, but on 2 occasions, he literally picked up a stick. I don't even know where he found it. And in the middle of a constellation, or like when I'm working with someone, in one, he drew a line and he just went like this, you know, it was a line.
Oh my God.
We're done. Like, that's it. We're done. He said so. And another one.
Wow.
Circle. And it was a very intense constellation. And I looked over, and the person said, he's drawing something in the sand. I said, yeah, I know. Like, you know, like it happens every day, which it doesn't, you know. And then she said, he's drawing circles. I said, oh, yeah, drawing a circle. I said, I guess that means that we're complete. That the work we've done is complete. Like, circle is a completion. Yeah. And as soon as I say that, like, he stops, right?
Yeah.
Like, got the message across, you know. Just validating here, you know.
Yeah.
And it's the level of awareness is just goes so deep, and it's unbelievable actually, but it happens.
Yeah, it's so amazing. And he was such an incredible teacher and rep. I mean, I've brought my family down to work with you in different capacities, and he was very involved. I'm so grateful I got to like know him. Yeah. I mean, the horses, what I get asked is like, if we have to teach the horses how to do this, or how do you train them? I'm like, well, it's actually untraining.
Exactly.
And it's being and allowing them to express their innate gifts. And same for the people too, allowing them to tap into that well of information and wisdom and access the field and work with the morphogenetic field directly through their body, with wisdom that is alive and present in the moment and timeless. And it's actually harder to teach people to do this work because they've got to get out of their heads a bit in order to connect to that flow, and the horses don't need to. And sometimes the constellations are almost entirely nonverbal. That's something else worth mentioning. It's like, it really is this movement, almost like a choreography of parts of the family system or parts of the self. And it's really moving to watch and to feel those, because it is just all feeling. And I believe that part of the reason it feels so natural and so good is because it's like we're speaking this lost language, this original language of the heart, of being, feeling, sensing, and knowing through that way, which is a powerful antidote in a culture where we live from the neck up. It's almost like, if I look at it as an art, it's like everybody has the instrument and it just needs a little bit of tuning. And then once we start playing, it's like, oh, I know this song. Let's jam. And they can be very, very playful too. And inspirational, and like they light up a lot of channels that maybe had an entanglement or a kind of constriction of some kind. A lot of the time, and something I see commonly is people saying, I have no idea what's going on. I just feel blocked. And so I'll see them do this and use the word block. I'm like, okay, let's start there. Let's just let the block speak and relate to other elements. And then that could be someone that morphs into a time of an event or another person, or it could be something that has come kind of down from the ancestors that doesn't belong to that person. And one of the most incredible moments that happens is when people powerfully say and are witnessed and heard saying, like, this is no longer mine to carry. I'm not, I let it go now. There's a very added dimension of power when using the voice and speaking into the moment. It's like, we call it spelling for a reason. Like, they're stating out what is true. They're being held and witnessed in it. They're declaring it to the mountains and the trees and to the sky. And it just adds more life, vibration, momentum, and frequency than like thinking that or journaling it or talking it out in a closed room. It's like, whoa, the stage is huge, and it's here to support this big aha moment, or release moment.
And can I jump in?
Yeah.
As the facilitator of these amazing, unfoldings, right? Of wherever it's going to go, somewhere, it's going to go somewhere. The more the facilitator has, the more neutrality the facilitator has, the wider it can go. Like, that it can go in areas that no one ever even imagined. Yeah. But if as a facilitator we come in with a narrow focus and narrow mind, then that's pretty much what you're going to allow as right.
Yeah.
And also, I think it's really crucial that facilitators do work on themselves.
Yeah.
Right.
The most.
especially because it is essentially, family constellation work, and doing work on their own family relations, very, and more importantly, the mother, the father, and to really come to this place of I say yes and thank you for my life and all that, to really be able to be in that space with nothing interfering in that with blame or dismissing the family in some way. Because it really it does show up in the constellations. And it takes time as well. And I think that's why it also takes time to learn this work, to be a facilitator. Because you went through some stuff, right? I went through some huge things, huge.
I would be worried if we weren't going through some stuff. It's like, you have to do your own descent into the underworld multiple times. And it's through the reemergence and the return of like, okay, it's in the dark where the treasures are, and the pain and all of the the shadow clean. It's like you just keep cleaning and polishing and adding
It's,
more health.
it's also where the resistance is, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
And what was I going to say? And oh, another thing I love about this work is that it doesn't require any drugs or any enhancements or any, like plant medicine or anything like that. I'm not ragging
Yeah.
on, but it can be done completely sober in the sense of like not being stimulated with anything, right?
Yeah. It's
And
is an altered state in itself. Like
definitely,
times it's
definitely,
exponential because being with a herd of horses in the field of their heart, it is a portal. It is entrainment into coherence. So you're dropped into an altered state because of the horses. And then there's this timeless, dreamless, formless, incredible magic, I think, of the field and how the constellations reveal themselves. And then those together, people have told me like they feel altered. And I have a responsibility, and you have a responsibility to constructing the journey so that people come back and assimilate and integrate and ground. But I actually got excited about and into this work because I was studying altered states of consciousness for healing. And I was like, how can we offer that experience to people in a safe way? It's a different kind of journey. And breath work is close. Like breath work is another way to kind of depart from waking consciousness, have an experience, and come back just with your own supply. But that. I'm glad you said that, because that is part of what makes it so powerful, memorable, and feels really big.
yeah. I mean, when I'm facilitating the conversations, I feel I'm in a trance. Like
Mm-hmm.
I feel, sometimes time really slows down.
Yeah.
Sometimes really slow, or any sense of time is no longer relevant, and it's just the experience
Yeah.
of things.
Yeah.
And yeah, that uh, I love that. I love that.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, also people are like, this is so silly, but I hear it so many times. They're like, I don't remember the last time I spent the entire day off my phone. So I think that the sheer presence of being with big animals, like there's a little I wouldn't call it fear, but there's like a ping of your instinct coming online of how present you need to be with horses, and two of the horses, and your horse too. You've got Diva, my favorite, like big. These are 2,000 pounds, 2,200-pound beings. There's an alertness. There's also a sense of being relaxed, and that relaxed alertness is a state that is ideal for both healing and creativity. And you're just in this way of being. I mean, time is very repressive. The clock minutes and scheduling things in hour blocks, it's like, it's not that natural. So to have practice of being so present and being in this like gently kind of altered state and coming back, it's a muscle that's really healthy to exercise. And even things like we adapt according to the weather and the amount of sunlight in a day, that we're constantly offering with a sense of flexibility for how the natural world and how our bodies naturally want to move and create. So I think it's important too that like we have these environments to try that out and to kind of become more like a horse or a plant or like the earth herself.
Yeah. I just feel also like the time aspects, like when I'm not watching the clock, when I just trust the process, and when we're finished, it's the minute of when the
Mm-hmm.
end time was. It's
Yeah.
always works out like that.
Yeah.
And recently I did my first like virtual constellation. I was asked if I would do it. It was at a group event, and I actually
Mm-hmm.
did two. And the weather was good and it wasn't windy. I couldn't have done it if it was too windy because it
Mm.
wouldn't have heard me. But I did it on Zoom and basically had them on my phone and took them in with the horses, and then I had a
Mm-hmm.
ride. We did the constellation, and it was kind of trippy, like um, communicating with someone in a completely different state in the United States, and going through the constellation with the horses, and the horses were really in it.
Yeah.
I was surprised. I didn't know what was going to happen. And then, and also like involving them,
Mm.
involving them in the sense of like asking them questions. How do you, what does that feel like? Did you notice this, and then asking questions as well. It was very sort of integrated, and
Mm-hmm.
it's a bit bizarre because it was, through this little fun.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was kind of interesting.
Wow. I would love to try.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Mixed
It makes
tech.
sense because we're so related with our physical form, but we're these like non-local beings squished into these meat and flesh suits. So to connect with the soul, or what is beyond the self with the capital S, beyond just what's in three-dimensional reality, it's like, it's fun. It's also important to have relationship with that. And same with, that's where I think it correlates with the ancestors. In certain cultures, I just came back from Dia de los Muertos in Mexico, and every house had these incredible altars to the ancestors or people that have departed with their favorite foods, and they would sing them songs, and they're relating to something that isn't physical form anymore as a cultural practice. And we have lost that. And in many, many ways, it's very common to either not know the names of, or not have ever met, or to never see people from your lineage, let alone like tell their stories. And oh, actually, here's a good like personal example is I'm building my website right now, and I'm kind of rolling out different offering structure. And I didn't feel my 100% full yes and clarity. So I did a constellation for myself with another friend who's a practice seasoned rep. And my grandfather came in, and my paternal grandfather, his name's Grandpa Fred. And Grandpa Fred raised animals his whole life. He also went blind and lost his eyesight in his 60s from glaucoma, and became obsessed with genealogy. So he's like breeding animals. He loses his eyesight. He starts going through all the family histories. He's like, you got your voice and you're singing from this person, and the shape of this person. And it was just telling these stories. And in the constellation, he came in and was like, I want to be acknowledged every time you teach horse constellations, because I gave you the medicine. It comes from me. And I laughed. I was like, oh, that was the thing that wanted to be included, the message, the person that wanted to be included in this creation, because it isn't just me or just me and the horses. It is connected to lineage. And told me how to, in the constellation, how to acknowledge him so that he can continue to be included and honored, and that my offering can grow and thrive. So that was a great example of like, it technically was a business constellation, but also included a family piece. And the really sort of beautiful, eerie part of that is he died the moment I loaded the horses on the trailer to move here.
Oh.
It was a huge storm. It was 4 a.m. It was totally dark. And the storm broke for about 15 minutes. There was no wind. I mean, like power lines going down, dramatic, where I thought, how am I ever going to load the horses? They don't trailer frequently. So the storm broke, loaded them in, sent them off. I got home and had found out that he had just passed. So that's a potent example of like inclusion, like the principle of belonging, of like equilibrium and reciprocity, like how his fate is connected to my fate, and how those things are separate, but also how they feed each other, and then precedence and the order of like, okay, he gave me this gift and then we both have a vision impairment. I mean, there are all these components that tether us together. And now in a healthy way, where it's like life force giving and gift giving. And it's like, okay, I'm going to tell his story now, but also every day we have a group, we're doing horse constellations. Like, thank you, Grandpa Fred, for teaching me about horses and ancestry. Cause that's basically the seed that was planted, so that when this came into my life, it was like, oh, these are very familiar, even though I didn't know that growing up.
Yeah, that's a great story. I want to throw in my grandfather's story.
Yeah.
My maternal grandfather joined the army when he was 15 in the First World War. Mm-hmm. And he ended up looking after the horses, and they were in the trenches. I don't know if you know anything about that war, but it was horrible. Mm-hmm. It was all in the trenches, and it was really cold, and they used to take the horses from the farm, like the draft horse, right? Because the horses would pull the cannons and things like that. Yeah. And sometimes they used the horses as shields and stuff like that. But anyway, after that, he got tear gassed and he couldn't work indoors, so he became a window cleaner. He used to clean windows for a living, and he couldn't talk about the horse experience at all. Like, it was super traumatic for him. Like, fast forward to me, I think it was in 2003, I start adopting horses. After Silver, I started adopting the Premarin mares, who happened to mostly be drafts, the big horses. And it wasn't like I said, I'm going to adopt draft horses. I just ended up with like 3 of them, And then I did the first constellation, and he came in because also he didn't know who his real father was. He found out that his father wasn't his father when he joined the army, because he needed his birth certificate. So he said, father unknown. So I was like, that's a mystery, right? And then it just sort of came through that constellation. It was my very first one, I think on my 40th birthday. And I just thought, like, from now on, from now, the next horse I get, I'm going to name it after him. His name was Jack, right? I'm going to name it after my grandfather. And I'm walking down to my horses, and then it suddenly hit me, like, I already have a horse called Jackie, right? But then I just started seeing all the dots connect, like all this kind of unconscious thing, all these things becoming conscious of my life and the path I'd taken. And obviously a correlation, because in constellation there's this thing about atoning, right? Or he was in a situation where these horses had horrible endings, and it was in war. I mean, there's nothing good about war, in my opinion, nothing. And then I come along, 2 generations later, and I'm rescuing draft horses. And I'd never thought of that as a kid or nothing, it just kind of happened. Yeah, and people will find that, like, when you get into constellation work, you'll start seeing connections, and it's really interesting. There's an incredible validation in that as well, right? Do you agree?
Yeah.
You feel held in some way.
Absolutely. The field really has this thing you can't quite name, but you feel is true, and it makes you believe in something really inherently good, that like we are being provided for and guided in a certain way. I mean, we had one day together, actually, when we led a retreat in New York. That's a good example of this, where the first day, every person had an experience, or the age 12, the number 12 came up in every constellation. It's like someone's dad was 12, or when they were 12, or there were 12 children, or it was like everything was a 12 day. And then the next day, 2 of the people in the group, the 2 men, mysteriously couldn't come. One had to leave and one got ill. And it was all women, and it was all mother stuff. Very feminine, very gentle, very womb based. And it was like, okay, we're just showing up for the ride. And I don't even need to make it mean anything, because it just had this feeling of awe and beauty and reverence. And that feeling is recreated over and over every time. Like, that's part of the gift, is walking away with that sense of belonging just on earth and being connected to life itself.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. I'm just checking the time.
Yeah,
So I wanted to kind of stay on time. We've got about a minute left. Is that okay? I think,
absolutely.
I think we covered quite a lot.
Yeah.
And I just want to say, I can't see any, or we can't see any of the comments. If anyone's watching, I hope you are. But if you're leaving any comments, like, I can't see them. And I think they disappear as well. Um, because we're on Zoom and streaming to my YouTube channel.
Yeah. Oh, they are on YouTube. I can see the ones from 2 weeks ago. There's a chat box on the
How
side.
come I can see it? That's
Yeah.
so weird.
Yeah. We'll get
I
it.
can
Well, yeah.
maybe you have to send those to me. Yeah, I'd really like to see what people are saying, and then yeah. What else?
Yeah. I just shout out that we have a monthly open group where you can come be in a group without bringing your own group. That's what I'm running this year and next year. And then end of January, I'm doing a 5-day experience for people that want to learn. So if this sounds like something that you want to learn, a teacher, healer, practitioner, therapeutic professionals can add nature constellations with or without horses into their toolkit, just to have that experience and practice and learn some of the basics. That's
Great.
coming up. Yeah.
I'm going to be doing. I haven't announced it yet, but I want to do a constellation for New Year's Eve
Oh,
to
cool.
um, get aligned to 2023, and it's
Great.
a really cool process. I used to do it a lot on New Year's Eve. Do that virtually, like online, and then yeah, and then I have a tabletop class coming up, I think in January, and I'm also going to do a 5-day in April, May,
Nice.
May 1st.
Cool.
Yeah. So please check out our events. I'm going to leave the links, like I said, in the description. And if you want to reach out to either of us, please do. Should I put your email as well? Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll leave our contacts, and I think that's it. But thank you for watching, and I'm la 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 la. Thank you for watching. I'm just going to end now. But thank you, Matisse. Thank you so much. That
Thank
was
you so much.
all right then. Okay.
Bye.
Bye.